Shing shing. Kek Filet TCG.
Hello, my Keklings. First, use the timestamps down below to help navigate this video, and leave a like and a comment for the algorithm. This simple act can go a long way to help boost my channel. Before I dive into the video, are you looking to coach players? Are you looking to be coached? My Discord server has a section where you can advertise for your coaching or look for coaching. I want my Discord to be a place of improving your game, and finding good help is really difficult. I wanted to bring that to my Discord. If you are someone looking to coach, or maybe someone who's already coaching, please join my Discord and message me on how we can get you set up on there. I want to help you grow as a coach and also promote your growth, and any person who's trying to grow in this game. Today is a guide with OP07 Enel with Dathalfbreed. He has devoted the last few months on his stream to just playing only Enel. And if you want to play Enel and frustrate your opponents and never lose, this deck might be for you. This guide is a promotion for my Patreon, where this is about 25 minutes of a video, which is already kind of a lot of content for a guide, but my Patreon, it's a 75 minutes of just talking about the card choices of Enel, utilizing the Enel leader, mulligans, and how to navigate all the facets of the game, and matchups with the spark notes on the side of the video. I want to say thank you to all my patrons for supporting me. I have this guide, Corona and Blue Dofi and Red Purple Law on my Patreon now, all unedited, but they are being edited as soon as possible. In a month's time, I will do an update on these guides and deck lists to see if anything changes after the August set of Treasure Cups and a preparation for Nationals. As a reminder, join the Discord down in the description below, and thank you for sitting all through my advertisements, and without further ado, let's get into the goo. It's a great day here at Kek Filet's videos. It's probably YouTube, probably Patreon, Snapchat, all those sort of things, Instagram. I am here with Dathalfbreed. How you doing today?
I'm doing good, man. How are you?
I'm doing so good. Thank you so much for asking. Today, we are bringing you all an Enel video guide, and we're going to go over everything here. I'll have like a big old list here, everything we're going over today. And I first want to introduce Dathalfbreed. He does have actually, I think it's a pretty good Twitch stream. You know, he gets decent viewers and actually entertaining to watch most of the time. And
well, thank you.
The reason why I'm bringing him, he does have good accolades, but he does put a lot of time into playing yellow Enel. I mean, how long have you been playing OP07 Enel specifically before this actually came out?
Oh, God. For a while. It's always so weird because, like, stuff comes out on the sim often before it even comes out in Japanese paper, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I've been trying the Enel list in various different versions for what feels like, God, almost 4 or 5 months now.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's like shortly after you get the full set spoiled in Japan, it comes out.
Mm-hmm.
And that's, 3 months before we get it. But
yeah,
I really liked Enel the second it came out. I was playing a lot of different Enel versions when it first came out as well. Just like, I'm a control deck fan. Like, I like control decks, but I want my control decks to still have creatures. I don't want to. I'm not as much of a fan of like Nami style control decks or Sakazuki style control decks where it's just like remove. And Enel kind of is just that, right? He's just so good at like drawing out the game longer and longer and longer. And the longer the game is, most of the time, the more likely the better player is to win, in my opinion, because longer game means more decisions. More decisions is more chances to make mistakes, and that's how you really like get one up when you're playing Enel.
a great way to bring it up. Why do you play Enel? Why should we be looking to play Enel in OP07? What's its niche? I mean, you kind of hit it there with the comments you had before, but if you wanted to elaborate.
I genuinely think that the Enel leader effect is one of the most broken effects in the game. Because if you learn how to use it properly, right? This idea of your first life, like once you get down to 1 life, your first life loss every turn is free. Just free. You basically get to lose a life and pretend like nothing happened, put it back, and even potentially get a trigger or like what I call cycle cards out of your hand, right? Because often you can literally just use the Nell effect to cycle a card from your hand.
Yeah, like a Katakuri. Yeah, something useless.
Yeah, like draw a card, discard a card, and it's really good. And if you know how to balance the Enel effect properly, you can get insane amounts of value, right? Like, the most broken thing to do with Enel by far is to go from 0 to 1. Because if you go from 0 life and you gain a life to 1, the Enel leader is basically gaining you 2 life.
Yeah.
Because you gain that 1 life, and then you also gain the ability to start using your leader effect
The
again.
amount of value gaining life in this leader is insane, right? That's the big thing, and it allows you to stall out the game, which there are some, playing really big targets ends up being really good, right? So that's the idea.
Enel is the #1 never die deck. If you like to never die, Enel is really good at that. And that's what I like to do when I first started playing the game, because how I sort of, got popular or blew up or whatever is because I got 3rd place at a Treasure Cup playing Eustace Kid.
Yeah.
And so I had a couple of weekends in a row where I like had a top 64 and then a 3rd place and then a top 64 playing Eustace Kid with 8-drop. Like, 8-drop Kid was my shit back in the day. And that's the same type of thing of just, like, go to a low life total and then never die and kill the opponent with a giant beat stick. So, if you like control games, if you like long games, if you like frustrating your opponent, then I definitely think Enel is great. If you like gambling, Enel is a great deck if you like gambling.
Yeah, I really believe in the frustrating part, right? Because I think frustrating your opponent is actually a part of the game. And when people literally switch decks because you're playing X, makes you feel important, right? That's the case. And so people do switch decks because this guy exists, and you have to play around that. So with that, let's actually just jump into deck lists. We actually have 2 deck lists we're going to go over today. Okay. And we're going to go over first the Oceania list that was recently popular. I know that you're working on it specifically, and then you will also show a list that you'd recommend. But I know one thing that's really interesting about this list, it does play the blocker Shirahoshi, which, it's a good blocker. It especially does well against things like black. And then on top of that,
good against the mono black decks.
Yellow Sabo. Super strong against a lot of these black yellow Luffy if they can't play down a black Sabo on that turn. And I mean, what are the? I guess we'll talk about this card specifically. Have you seen this being pretty useful so far in like a lot of matchups?
It's a hit or miss card. In the matchups where it's good, it's very good. But there's a lot of matchups where it doesn't do that much.
Okay. I mean,
it's definitely like
it's like a worse Kadatsu, right?
Yes, it definitely is a worse Gadatsu in most matchups, but Gadatsu is so good that, like, having a slightly worse one is fine to have copies 5 and 6 or, like, 5 through 8, because, like, to me, Gadatsu is one of the best yellow cards, period. Like, I can't think of almost any yellow deck where I wouldn't want to have Gadatsu in it. It's just so insanely flexible, and being able to, like, have a decent sized body on something that also destroys one of your opponent's characters is so huge. And like, when you play a Gadatsu and you blow up a 5 cost with it, it feels so insanely broken. Like, I just played my 5 cost, got rid of your 5 cost, and I still have like a body left behind. So it's really flexible. And even if it doesn't kill something big, it still gets blockers, gets like Bonnies and baby 5s, even if they have 8-drop Kid out, snipes little stuff.
Yeah. It's cute. It's good. So in a way, this is just a worse Sabo, a worse Gadatsu.
Gadatsu, but sometimes it's better. in like there's some very specific targets that you want to hit with this.
Mm.
The number 3 cards that you want to kill with this Sabo are yellow ST13 Luffy
Yep.
in black and yellow Luffy. The one that becomes an 8K
Yeah,
body
the
just
big
because
Luffy.
8K is too big for you to deal with otherwise. Cavendish in Bonnie, because if they can play
Oh.
Cavendish and defend it, they just get crazy amounts of value off of free Dawn.
Mm.
And then the last one is Eustace Kid in against Red Purple Law.
Okay.
You're not the greatest fan of doing that. Okay, we're not the biggest fan of blowing up the Eustace Kid against Red Purple Law with Sabo, but sometimes you do what you have to do, especially if the Law decks are trying to like starve you as you starve them back. And yeah, you want to get rid of the Kid if you at all can, because it shuts them off of having too many Dawn.
Okay. Got it. So it has those options, but I know that this one still plays 7-drop Enel. Is this mostly just angled toward black?
Yeah, it's mostly specifically to help the mono black matchup.
Okay.
Because it's one of the few things that you can play on curve and still keep alive.
Okay.
Especially if they have stage and stuff like that. It's hard for them to kill 9 and 10 drops just because it's very expensive. You know, it usually costs them at least an Ice Age or 2 different combinations of cards.
Yeah, it's going to be expensive. Super expensive.
Yeah, but 7 drops are actually easier to get rid of than you might think. It's just like Hina plus stage or 1 Ice Age or something like that. But you often have the extra life lying around, and you can gain it back with your leader effect sometimes too if you haven't used that yet. So
yeah.
And against black, you need to aggro against them because the only thing that can generate more value than yellow Enel is like 8-drop Gecko Moria.
Yeah. I did want to go over a big card that basically set this, that's why we're playing Enel begin with, right? Yep. The newest card that set everyone's playing it, Secret Portcast DA. So one thing I want to tell people, and I got it from watching his live stream today, you can choose not to add a life. So you can just get the rush if you're still at 2 life. So it's kind of funny.
Card is insane.
But you can also gain rush if you have not enough life. But I mean, was this like is this card just too broken? Like, why would they should this card be restricted?
No. Too broken? No, it is exactly broken enough. It turns this deck from a tier 2 deck into a tier 1 deck, right? Okay. Like the biggest problem with Enel previously in like 05 and 06 was that, like I mentioned, the most powerful thing to do with Enel is to go from 0 to 1, right? And in the previous versions of Enel, you only had one guaranteed way to do that, which was 9-drop Yamato. And you had to draw your 9-drop Yamatos raw, right? There's no searcher, there's no nothing. You're just relying on regular draw steps and your trigger Shirahoshi sometimes, right? But the difference between having 4 life gains and 8 is just so huge.
Yeah, it's consistent. So you don't have to draw 4 Yamatos to win against a high rolling player. You can draw 2 and 2 or something like that.
Yeah.
Right? I will say a weakness in Enel that in its late game, it's extremely telegraphed what's going to happen. Like you can already predict like almost 2 turns in a row what Enel's going to do, because it's just pay 10, pay 9, gain a life. So they can actually plan around your life quite heavily, which isn't exactly a bad thing either. It's just a thing that both players have to deal with. But
yeah, I mean, how flexible this card is great. Like you said, a lot of people don't realize that you don't have to gain the life with it. So like you have so many options with it. You can just play it as a 10-10 gain a life. You can play it as a 10-10 rush, and every now and then it'll do both, right? It'll have rush and gain a life, and that's when this card's like crazy.
Yeah. One other card that came up, and I've never talked about it because I've never had an Enel guide, is actually Raigo or Kingdom Come. I believe this card's necessary for the meta, right? For the cards you see, if people play a big drop against you, like a Zoro or even a Kuzan, 10-drop Kuzan. This card's kind of needed for those sort of matchups. Any thoughts on this before we continue on to the other list?
No, I agree with you totally. This was one of those like necessary type prints where this deck really, really struggled with 10-drop Doflamingo, 9-drop Zoro, like you said. Even cards like 8-drop Isho and stuff like that. And 8 drops and 9 drops and 10 drops there's like a 10-drop Kaido too, the draw 4-1, right?
Yeah.
And it's like, it used to be the only way you had to kill stuff was your Gadatsus or your Katakuris for 8 costs. So you need something to kill the 9 and 10 costs that people are going to play. And the trigger is not bad at all either. The trigger is so good against decks like Red, Purple Law, and Bonnie.
Yeah. Yeah. It's very
relevant. Get a free Papa thing.
It's very, very relevant, I think. So definitely needed necessary evil. Obviously, we can't play reject. I wish we had a reject-like card that just didn't do the damage, just did the KO part. Right?
Yeah.
But we're stuck with Buzzcut Mochi and another card, which is not good, right? We don't like those. But maybe in the future they'll make like another reject that just does half of what it's supposed to do. So,
yeah, Thunderbolt 2-. You just play the Sabo.
Yeah, there's that too, right? So with that, we'll jump into your other deck list here, which was this one. The main difference is that you played 6-cost 8K Parasparrow, Rocket Luffy, and you're playing a couple 7-moms. And I do want to give a disclaimer to most people. Everybody, when you're making a deck list, you're also playing Onamis. When you're making a deck list, when you make a deck, when you copy a deck list, use it and then immediately adjust it to based off of how you play or how what you're expecting to play. Because most people do change their deck lists quite often to good players, right? Change their deck lists based off of how they feel, like by like maybe 5, 6, 7 cards. I'm sure right before a tournament you'll probably see this and go, you know what? I actually feel like I don't want this and I want that, right? But this guide's like a general thing with that. But go ahead. Do you want to explain exactly the Onamis and the Parasparrows and such?
Yeah, I mean, this was a list that I like specifically started playing because I started playing against like, God, when Extra Booster came out, Red Purple Law was like the new hotness, and it was everywhere. And if you're playing the other version, Red Purple Law can be a bit of a struggle sometimes because like Shirahoshi's not relevant, and you can only play one. You can only play one Sabo per game, really. Like, you can only trash a life once per game while they're aggroing you down super hard.
Yeah.
So I had to find some other ways to, like, try and handle the Red-Purple Law matchup. And there's, like, other matchups where the Rocket Luffy helps. I think that this deck list is fine against Moria, too, and some of the other, like, go-wide decks. But yeah, this was my like super anti-Red Purple Law matchup where against Red Purple Law, you basically don't ever have to like attack them without banish until like you have 2 10-drop aces. Because you can just never attack them, and you want to keep all of your life and all of their life. So that this deck has 11 KO character triggers, right? Like, you just blow up characters taking damage so easily and so often. The Raigo, the Luffy, the Nami. And then in the late game, it's just so easy to play 7-moms, so they have to either get banished or play a Onami, so they have to get banished. And like, man, against Red Purple Law, playing Onami into 8-drop Katakuri, putting the Onami into life, is so busted.
That's so
it's
gross.
So broken.
I mean, they probably leader skill this right away, but that means they can't leader skill something else, right?
Yeah, I mean, you want to do both in one turn, right? You want to play the Onami and the Katakuri in the same turn.
You're gross. That's good.
Yeah. But there are still turns, like really good turns that you can have where you're just like, because sometimes you just want to pressure cards out of their hand, and if they take the banish, it's not that bad. But because you can play like Onami plus a Rocket Luffy or plus a Gadatsu in the same turn, and then they have to choose, right? Like, do I get rid of the Gadatsu that attacks me, or do I get rid of the Onami that they might heal into their life? So, if you can play the Onami and something else on the same turn, that's when it's the best.
Onami like a Yamato or an Ace, and then play down Katakuri's the nuts, though. Like, I would agree. That is gross. So. Okay, great. So this deck is more angled toward that. I did want to ask in general. I didn't ask before. How
should trigger heavy?
What are we doing against most decks? Are you actually just playing a non-attack strategy most of the time?
Yes.
Okay.
against pretty much every deck other than like blue Nami and the mono black
Mhm.
decks, you're trying to stall out and draw out the game as long as possible.
Oh, okay.
Like the vast majority of the time as an L, like you don't care what their life total is.
Okay.
Because
You're gonna win the game
you
at some
I
point.
don't know if you're going to ask this or you have, like, how you win with an L most of the time is by having like 3 9-drops in play. Like that's when you
Mhm.
start attacking them. You're like, okay, I play a 9-drop, I play a 9-drop, I play a 9-drop. Okay, now we can start attacking.
Yeah.
And then you just try and kill them legitimately in 2 turns, right?
Why
You
is that
just
different with mono black? It's just they abuse Gecko Moria. You like.
they have too many easy sources of like card advantage. 8 cost Moria being the main
Mm,
one. Um, and you're not able to like again, you want to win when you have 2 or 3 9-drops in play, but in that matchup you can't keep 2 or 3 9-drops in play. They'll be able to
oh,
kill them like
eventually.
eventually. So even though it might take some time, you still like
Mm,
need to put some pressure on them. And like the discard is the biggest problem too, is that against other matchups you can get a big hand size and
uh-huh.
keep yourself alive for a long time. But if they keep making you discard and run you out of cards in hand, you will die, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah. Okay. Got it. So there's a different balance to that exactly, and that's why we're playing differently into that specific deck. So okay.
Hmm.
Great. With that, I think we're just ready to jump into the next version of all of this. Is actually the well, actually, I want to go over one other thing. Any
Sure.
optional cards you'd maybe consider for this at all? Like cards maybe we didn't mention.
Amaru is not bad.
Okay.
As like tech cards, there's like Amaru. You
Hmm.
can play the 7/9 vanilla instead of the 6/8 if you're worried about
Yes.
getting Raging Tiger. That's a big one.
Hmm.
Trying to think. What else are some odd cards that you can play every now and then?
Yeah. I mean, what are your thoughts on like Sky Island? Any package of Sky Island, like Holy? Is that just kind of like of the past now?
Yeah, Holy has kind of just gotten power crept in that
Yeah.
we're
There's too much
kind of
removal.
in a metagame right now where big bodies are king.
Okay.
Um, like you need big bodies to attack into Enel, otherwise you're not going to be able to kill them.
Hmm.
You need big bodies to be able to keep your stuff alive against Bonnie.
Hmm.
You need big bodies to not have all your stuff get Raging Tigered against Boa. You need big
Mm.
bodies to be able to attack into Black Yellow Luffy when their leader is 9K.
Yeah.
And its small bodies just get wiped from the board against Mono Black with their Luchis too easily.
Mm.
So
Okay.
Holy kind of got outscaled a little bit. Um, but there are other random things you can do. Like you can play some I Am Gods if you want to play Rushanel.
Yeah, but
Amaru's a good one.
it's okay. I mean, like you're not trying to rush out a Nell anymore. You know, you're not. You're not. You're playing big bodies. You're playing a Nell to play a Nell,
Yeah.
but you don't need the event to play a Nell, right? So
Yeah, it's just one of those things where in the late game, sometimes it's a nice finisher to play a rush character for 4.
yeah, yeah,
There's
I'd
the
agree.
5/7 ace as well if you want to play a rush heavy
Oh,
package.
Hiyori. Some people play Hiyori, so I'll mention that as
Yeah,
well. In case you're playing things like Kikanojo, not Okiku, right? Kikanojo, right? The 4/6.
yeah.
Some people are still on that a little
Hiyori
bit.
combos really well with Katakuri as well.
It does.
Just letting
Because you can
you
put it
like,
back into life. Yeah,
yeah,
yeah, because you can. Okay, yeah, because you can put the Yuri at the bottom of your life and stack the top of your
yeah.
life, so it's pretty cute. I agree with that. Right. So.
I mean, Enel is just kind of a deck where a lot of like Enel has no early game. Enel's early game is taking
Mm,
damage.
yeah.
Like your early game, you don't play any early game
Mm,
characters. Your early game plan is literally just to take damage
mhm.
and add cards to your hand in most matchups. So like you don't really need cheap cards unless you have to play them.
Okay.
And it's like the only exception is like Shirahoshi just because of how strong it is against black. But Yeah, most of the time you don't need cheap cards. There's very little wiggle room in this deck now. I feel like there's 6 or 7 different cards you could play, but yeah, there's like 5, 7 Ace, Amaru.
That's what's nice about
are, like,
the
the main
Oceanic
ones.
build too. You actually have something to do in the early game, like by playing a blocker. So
Yeah,
I
the
would say.
Shirahoshi is the main early game thing you can do.
Mhm.
You can play Onami early game too. It's not bad. Like very often, I don't know. I'm
Swing
probably
7.
skipping ahead a little bit, but against 90% of decks in the metagame, you want to go second as Enel.
Yeah.
So it's like pretty good to play Onami on 2 and attack for 7 banish. Or sorry,
Yeah.
when you have 4 Dawn on your 4 Dawn turn, play Onami for 2 and attack for 7 banish. Like that's a fine early game play too.
Okay. Yeah, I agree with that. Okay. With that, let's jump into the mulligan. In general, what are we looking to mulligan for?